Woman was God's second mistake. Friedrich Nietzsche. You've been lied to your entire life about what makes a man truly powerful. Every relationship advice book, every Hollywood movie, every well-meaning friend has fed you the same poisonous narrative that to be a complete man, you need to find the one and sacrifice everything for her happiness. But here's what they don't want you to know. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most brilliant philosophers, discovered something so dangerous about certain women that his notes on this topic were hidden from the public for decades. What he found wasn't just controversial, it was revolutionary. In his private journals, Nietzsche identified a specific type of woman who doesn't just drain a man's bank account or steal his time. She does something far more sinister. She systematically destroys his life force, his creativity, his ambition, everything that makes him a man of power and purpose. This isn't about hating women. This is about understanding a fundamental truth that could save your life, your career, and your very soul from being consumed by a force you never saw coming. You see, most men enter relationships thinking they're gaining a partner. But what Nietzsche discovered is that certain women operate like psychological vampires, feeding off masculine energy while giving nothing of value in return. They don't do this consciously. It's hardwired into their nature, a survival mechanism that's been perfected over thousands of years. The tragedy is that the men who fall victim to these women are often the most talented, the most ambitious, the ones with the greatest potential. These predators don't waste time on weak men. There's nothing to drain. They target the lions, the creators, the future leaders of the world. Right now, as you read this, millions of men are walking around as hollow shells of their former selves, wondering where their dreams went, why they feel so tired all the time, why that fire in their belly died. They blame themselves, their circumstances, bad luck, never realizing they've been systematically drained by someone they thought loved them. But what comes next will shock you even more, because Nietzsche didn't just identify the problem. He revealed exactly how these women operate, the specific tactics they use, and most importantly, how a man can protect himself from becoming their next victim. The rabbit hole goes deeper than you think. Nietzsche understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to grasp. Relationships aren't just about love, they're about power. In his concept of will to power, he revealed that every human interaction is fundamentally a struggle for dominance, energy, and control. In revenge and in love, woman is more barbarous than man, Nietzsche wrote. But this wasn't misogyny. It was cold, hard observation. He recognized that while men compete through direct confrontation, certain women have evolved far more sophisticated methods of acquiring power and resources. Here's where it gets disturbing. Nietzsche identified what he called the life-denying woman, a creature who appears nurturing and supportive on the surface but operates as a parasite underneath. Unlike the life-affirming woman who inspires a man to greatness, this archetype systematically dismantles everything that makes him powerful. The life-denying woman doesn't destroy through obvious means like infidelity or direct conflict. She's far more cunning. She operates through what Nietzsche termed slave morality, making weakness appear virtuous and strength appear shameful. She convinces her target that his ambitions are selfish, his independence is cruel, his success makes others feel bad. Think about Napoleon's Josephine, who nearly destroyed the most powerful man in Europe through constant emotional manipulation and infidelity. Or consider how many brilliant artists, entrepreneurs, and leaders throughout history were brought down not by their enemies, but by the women closest to them who slowly convinced them to abandon their missions. Nietzsche saw this pattern everywhere. Men of genius reduced to mediocrity by women who claimed to love them, but actually resented their greatness. These women don't want to destroy their men out of malice. They do it out of instinct. They sense that a man's power and purpose represent a threat to their control over him. The philosopher understood that these women operate through emotional terrorism. They create artificial crises, manufacture drama, and then position themselves as both the problem and the solution. A man finds himself constantly in crisis management mode, using all his mental and emotional energy to maintain peace in his relationship instead of building his empire. But here's the most insidious part. They make it look like love. They frame their control as caring, their manipulation as concern, their sabotage as support. "I just want what's best for you" becomes the rallying cry as they systematically dismantle every aspect of what made him attractive to them in the first place. Nietzsche called this the eternal return of feminine destruction, the same pattern repeating throughout history as powerful men fall victim to the same psychological traps. He witnessed it in ancient Rome, medieval courts, and the salons of 19th century Europe. The most dangerous part? These women often believe their own narrative. They genuinely think they're helping, even as they drain their partner's life force. This self-deception makes them incredibly convincing and nearly impossible to confront directly. But understanding this dynamic is just the beginning. The real horror lies in how they execute their strategy. Now comes the part that will make your blood run cold. Because once you see the pattern, you'll recognize it everywhere. Maybe even in your own life. The energy vampire doesn't announce herself. She doesn't walk in wearing a sign that says, "I'm here to destroy your potential." Instead, she arrives as your biggest supporter, your greatest admirer, the woman who truly understands you like no one else ever has. This is her first weapon, mirroring. She studies your dreams, your values, your deepest desires, and reflects them back to you perfectly. You think you've found your soulmate, but what you've actually found is a master manipulator who's learned to become your ideal woman, just long enough to sink her hooks in. Nietzsche observed this phenomenon in his personal relationships and documented it obsessively. He watched as brilliant men around him fell for women who seemed perfect at first, only to transform once commitment was secured. The transformation is never sudden. That would be too obvious. It's gradual, methodical, like a slow-acting poison. Phase 1 is love bombing. She makes you feel like the most important man in the world. Your goals become her goals. Your dreams become her dreams. She talks about your future together, how she wants to support your mission, how lucky she is to have found a man of your caliber. You feel invincible, like you can conquer the world with this woman by your side. But here's what Nietzsche noticed. While she's building you up, she's also cataloging your weaknesses. Every insecurity you share, every fear you confess, every vulnerability you expose, she files it away for future use. She's not listening to support you, she's gathering ammunition. Phase 2 begins once she feels secure in your commitment. The criticism starts small. Maybe you're working too hard. Your friends seem like a bad influence. Is that business idea really practical? She frames it as concern, but she's testing your boundaries, seeing how much of your independent thinking she can erode. Then comes the isolation. She doesn't forbid you from seeing friends or pursuing interests. That would be too obvious. Instead, she creates situations that make these activities uncomfortable or guilt-inducing. She has an emergency every time you have plans. She gets sick when you want to travel. She picks fights right before important meetings or events. Phase 3 is the complete inversion. The woman who once admired your ambition now resents it. The dreams she once supported now threaten her security. The independence she once found attractive now makes her feel abandoned. She begins a systematic campaign to convince you that your pre-relationship self was selfish, immature, and unrealistic. Here's the most diabolical part. She makes you complicit in your own destruction. Through constant emotional manipulation, she trains you to self-sabotage. You start turning down opportunities because they might upset her. You abandon projects because she needs more attention. You dim your light to make her feel more comfortable with her own darkness. Nietzsche called this the vampire's kiss. The moment when the victim begins to participate in their own draining, you start to believe that sacrificing your potential is what love looks like. That real men put their women's emotional needs above their own life purpose. The final stage is complete energy transfer. Your vitality, your creativity, your drive, it all flows into managing her emotional state instead of building your empire. You become a shell of your former self, while she feeds off the chaos she creates. She's never happier than when you're struggling. because your struggle means she has your full attention. And the most twisted part, she'll blame you for the destruction she's orchestrated. You've changed, she'll say. You're not the man I fell in love with. Of course you're not. She systematically destroyed that man. But the darkness goes even deeper than you realize. But here's the question that will haunt you. Why do strong men fall for this pattern over and over again? Nietzsche spent years studying this phenomenon, and what he discovered about male psychology will disturb you to your core. The truth is, the men who fall hardest for energy vampires aren't the weak ones. They're the most powerful, and that's not an accident. It's by design. Nietzsche realized that high-achieving men have a fatal flaw. They're builders, creators, fixers. When they see a broken woman, and energy vampires always present as beautifully broken, their instinct is to save her. They think they can love her into wholeness, transform her pain into purpose, become the hero of her story. This savior complex is hardwired into masculine psychology through millions of years of evolution. Men who could protect and provide for women had evolutionary advantages. But what worked in primitive societies becomes a death trap in modern relationships with psychologically sophisticated predators. Here's what's even more sinister. These women specifically target men in their prime. They don't waste time on losers because there's nothing to drain. They hunt successful entrepreneurs, talented artists, rising leaders, men whose energy is worth stealing. Your success makes you a target, not a fortress. Nietzsche observed that these vampires have an almost supernatural ability to identify men who are achievement-oriented, but validation-starved. Maybe you grew up with an absent father or critical mother. Maybe you've been so focused on building your empire that you've neglected your emotional needs. They can smell this wound from miles away. They exploit what Nietzsche called slave morality, the poisonous idea that sacrifice equals virtue. Society has programmed you to believe that real love means putting her needs above your own mission, that selfish men put themselves first, but good men put their women first. This programming makes you complicit in your own destruction. But here's the most devastating realization. You're not just losing your energy, you're losing your identity. The energy vampire doesn't just drain your motivation, she rewrites your entire personality. Through a process of constant emotional conditioning, she trains you to become a different person entirely. You stop making decisions without her approval. You start seeing your own interests as selfish. You begin to believe that your dreams are unrealistic, your ambitions are immature, your independence is selfishness. She doesn't just take your energy, she convinces you to hand it over willingly. Nietzsche called this the great substitution. The moment when a man replaces his life mission with relationship management. Instead of conquering territories, building businesses, or creating art, your primary occupation becomes keeping her happy. Your empire crumbles while you tend to her emotional garden. The most tragic part? You'll thank her for it. By the end, you'll actually believe she saved you from your own selfishness, that she made you a better man by destroying everything that made you powerful. You'll wear your weakness like a badge of honor, proof of how much you love her. This is why Nietzsche's notes were kept secret for so long. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you understand the psychology behind it, you'll never be the same. But there is a way out. The way out isn't what you think. It's not about avoiding women or becoming a bitter hermit. Nietzsche's solution was far more sophisticated and far more powerful. He called it becoming the Übermensch in relationships. The man who transcends the slave morality that makes him vulnerable to energy vampires in the first place. This isn't about domination or cruelty. It's about becoming psychologically immune to manipulation through absolute commitment to your own life mission. Here's the first principle. Your mission comes first, always. Not sometimes, not when convenient, not when she's in a good mood, always. The energy vampire's primary weapon is convincing you that love means sacrificing your purpose for her comfort. The liberated man understands that real love enhances purpose, never diminishes it. Nietzsche observed that men who maintained their power in relationships were those who never negotiated their core mission. They might compromise on small things, where to eat dinner, what movie to watch. But their fundamental life direction was non-negotiable. This creates what he called attractive indifference. You become more desirable precisely because you can't be possessed. The second principle, emotional independence. The energy vampire feeds off your need for her validation and approval. She creates artificial emotional highs and lows to keep you addicted to the relationship drug. The liberated man derives his emotional stability from his own achievements and self-respect, not from her moods. This means developing what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate. You accept that some people are energy vampires, that some relationships are tests of your strength, that some women will try to diminish you. Instead of being angry about this reality, you use it as fuel for your own development. The third principle, strategic withdrawal. When you recognize vampire behavior, the manipulation, the emotional terrorism, the systematic undermining of your goals, you don't fight it directly. That's what she wants. Conflict feeds her. Instead, you withdraw your energy completely. You become politely unavailable, emotionally unreachable, psychologically absent. This is the most powerful weapon against energy vampires because it's the one thing they can't manipulate. They can create drama, manufacture crises, and play victim, but they can't force you to care. Your indifference becomes your armor. But here's the key insight that Nietzsche emphasized. Liberation isn't just about protecting yourself from toxic women. It's about becoming the kind of man who attracts life-affirming women while repelling energy vampires. When you're truly committed to your mission, when you're emotionally independent, when you can't be manipulated, you become invisible to vampires and irresistible to queens. The life-affirming woman doesn't want to drain your energy. She wants to multiply it. She doesn't compete with your mission. She becomes part of it. She doesn't demand that you choose between her and your purpose. She helps you achieve your purpose more effectively. Your transformation starts now. Every day you continue living by slave morality, putting her emotions above your mission, seeking her approval above your own self-respect, choosing temporary peace over permanent power, is another day you remain a victim. Nietzsche's final warning echoes across the centuries. He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. Stop crawling. Start flying.